Hi, Don Peterson here at the Swing Factory Golf Studio in Roswell. Check me out on my website, swingfactory.com. I'd like to go over a lesson that I had the other day with one of my students who's quite a good player, but one of the things he's always done is he's always had a kind of a flying right elbow and a steep swing. He never really went across the line very much, but a lot of students have the same problem with the right elbow coming out and then getting the club across the line. You also see the cupped wrist a lot of times. So with a lot of students, I'm trying to work on getting the right elbow in a better position. I call it, a lot of people call it the tray position. And we worked on this with him for several months, and he kept coming back and telling me, he says, Don, he says, I don't have enough flexibility to get my right elbow in front. So he'd put his arm up like this and he'd show me it doesn't bend backwards very well. And I said, well, you just have to keep working on it, it'll come. And so again, we discussed this, and at one point he grabbed a club and he said, Don, he says, I had an instructor a few years ago and he showed me a little exercise like this to increase my flexibility in my rotator cuff and try to get the right elbow in. He says, do you think that'll help? And I picked up a club and I started doing this, and number one is it puts a lot of strain and stress on your rotator cuff, and I can't turn my elbow very far in front of me doing that as well. And when I did what I feel at the top of my swing, this is not what I feel more like my shoulder drops and my elbow drops this direction, not turning backwards like this. This hurts. Your elbow's designed, your rotator cuff's designed to go this way, not backwards. So this could cause injury, and it's not exactly the position we want. So what I'm looking at is when your shoulder is in this position, that's what they call elevated. Your scapula is elevated, and so therefore you can't get much internal rotation, and instead you're kind of doomed to be in this position with your right elbow out and your scapula is in this elevated position. So instead of that, let's go and think about that tray position and look at the position of your shoulder, and they call this a depressed scapula or depressed shoulder. So that's, instead of elevated, it's depressed. So you drop it down, and then therefore if I were to do this drill, instead of pulling back like that, I would just drop my shoulder, and then it feels like I've got my right elbow way turned in. And if I did a full backswing like that with a depressed scapula, and again, if you look at this drill, if I just, right here, I can't turn my elbow in, but if I drop that scapula and I depress the scapula in my shoulder, that's the position I want you to try to work on. If you're having trouble with your right elbow flying, if you're having trouble with across the line, if you're having trouble with cupped wrist at the top, open club face coming down, any type of an outside in swing path, let's go back and see if we can get this position a little bit better at the top. It's actually a very relaxed position. You have to learn to go back and just drop that shoulder, drop your scapula down in a depressed position. And it really, it's kind of funny because I've always talked about trying to get people to hinge their right wrist back. I've talked about trying to get people to get their right elbow in front. And really, if you do this with the scapula, this the scapula, it almost gets you in a completely different hinged position. And a lot of people think it feels flat rather than upright. And again, this feels upright. And if I take my scapula and I drop it this way, that feels pretty flat. Feels more like a one-plane swing and feels more like a baseball swing, which is, again, I wrote the book on about baseball golf swing method. So I'm all about trying to get people to swing on more of a one plane and get this simpler golf swing rather than a complicated golf swing that's more vertical and a little bit out of position in my opinion. So go out and work on this and give me some feedback. Let me know what you think.